My name is Jeff Morris. I'm a learning content developer for ASCENT. And the things we're going to be covering today are looking at the differences between the course levels of essential courses and beyond the basics courses. We'll be looking at a new format for these learning guides, and we'll be looking at the topics that are covered in our current offering, which is Civil 3D 2024, Beyond the Basics for Grading. We'll be doing a demonstration of some exercises within the book, and the exercises will be focusing on a detention pond. And then I'll be answering the questions that have been entered into the chat to wrap things up. Okay, so in the past, we had fundamental level courses, which attempted to cover the fundamentals of particular software. Now, the Civil 3D program is quite a complex program, and it just keeps growing in complexity with each new release. And eventually it became rather difficult to cover all the fundamentals in one course. The last fundamentals course covered 4 days, and we were about to spill over into the 5th day. And then we decided to actually break the fundamentals into 2 separate levels. One being the essentials level, which covers the essentials of the Civil 3D program, and then a variety of beyond the basics level courses. 2 that we have currently is Beyond the Basics for General Design, and this latest offering, which we're introducing now, which is Beyond the Basics for Grading. Now, back in 2022, Autodesk introduced the Grading Optimization Program for Civil 3D, which is a completely new way of grading within Civil 3D. So we actually introduced a 1-day course for that, which was Civil 3D 2022 Fundamentals for Grading Optimization. And our previous offering for grading, which was last year, which was Civil 3D 2023 Fundamentals for Land Developers. So for this release, we stripped out the essentials aspects of the Civil 3D for Land Developers, but we included the grading optimization to come up with our current offering, which is Civil 3D 2024 Beyond the Basics for Grading. It sounds rather complicated. It's complicated for me to say, but I hope it makes sense. So the topics covered in this Beyond the Basics for Grading is we're going to be have an overview how grading for land developers can work, and look at the Civil 3D styles required for grading. Feature lines figure very prominently in grading, and so we'll be looking at multiple methods of creating feature lines, and we will introduce you to the Grading Optimization Program. And then we'll be looking at a variety of grading solutions for building pad design. We'll be looking at 2 options for parking lot design. We'll be looking at 3 options for pond design, 2 options for parcel grading. And then in the appendices, we'll be looking at how to combine surfaces and also how to use InfraWorks for visualization of this particular grading site that we're doing. So as an example, what we'll be using is a detention pond. We'll be looking at the course, how the exercises for the detention ponds are laid out. And then we'll jump into the software and grade briefly grade a detention pond using the traditional method of grading objects, and then also using the grading optimization method. In the appendix in this course is also a chapter how to grade a detention pond, or more precisely a lagoon, as a corridor. So let's look at the courseware. So this is our newest offering, which is Autodesk Civil 3D 2024 Beyond the Basics for Grading. And these are the contents within this book. And this also demonstrates the new format of our courseware. It's a little bit bolder. The pages are wider, a little bit more colorful. For example, in chapter 1 for grading for land developers, we generally talk about the theory, the different components for grading. We briefly introduce the grading optimization program, or the various parts of grading within Civil 3D. The chapter we'll be looking at is, or the exercises we'll be looking at, is how to grade a pond. And once again, we look at the overall theory behind pond design. We'll be reviewing how feature lands work, look at the traditional grading methods, and then we get into a variety of exercises. Now, the way the exercises work are, you can start, you can open up an existing drawing and continue to work on it, and the various steps of what needs to be done in this particular exercise. And what I want to show you is, when I get to it, the following exercise is based on the previous drawing. So you can continue on the previous drawing, or if you didn't quite complete the previous exercise, you can open up the next drawing where the previous exercise has been completed. So that's very typical within the Civil 3D courses. You can continue on with the previous exercise, or you can open up the next drawing where the previous exercise was successfully completed for you. Let's get down to the grading optimization program. Again, we start with some theory behind the grading optimization program, the various aspects of the grading optimization, and then we get to that exercise where, again, we start with a drawing. Pond GO is for grading optimization, pond go A, and then there's pond go B and pond go C. Now, other aspects to this course is at the end of the chapter, we have chapter review questions, and then there's a summary of the various commands that we did in this particular chapter. Then there's a variety of appendices, and you can see this is the instructor guide. So the instructor guide will actually give you how much time is required for this particular appendix. And the instructor guide will also give you the answers of the chapter review questions. Those are not available in the student guide. Okay, well, let's jump into Civil 3D. Let's move this. Sure that I follow the practices properly. So this is quite typical. Notice we have pond A, pond B, pond, well, I have C, I didn't open that up. And also pond GO for grading optimization. So typically the way these, the data structure is set is we have a working folder under the course itself where all the practices are. And the practices are divided into the various aspects that we want to cover: building design, lagoon, parcels, parking lot, etc. And then we have a configuration folder for the various parts within Civil 3D in terms of survey setting, assembly sets, and templates. We have a folder for data shortcuts, a folder for the various references that we have, be they data references, drawing references, images, point clouds, or even Revit files. So it's a realistic folder structure for a variety of projects. And you'll also notice, for example, for pond, we have the ponds going from A to E. We have the pond GO for grading and optimization. And then we have a completed pond, so you can see how the overall exercise should look. And then sometimes I also have a south pond. What that means is we focus mostly on the northern part of the site. And then there's auxiliary exercises for you to do in the south, which include very little instructions, where you can go through the lessons learned for the northern site and practice in the southern site. Okay. So that being said, we have our northern site up here to the north of Jeffries Ranch Road, and the southern site is to the south of Jeffries Ranch Road, where we can grade, ball fields or soccer fields or the school. And there's actually a pond layout for the pond as well. So if I thaw all layers, then you see the pond layout for the northern site, as well as the pond layout for the southern site. I'll undo my layers. So this is the very first part of the pond exercise. And what we do here, for example, is we take this particular polyline and turn it into a feature line. And as I said, the next drawing will have this already completed for us. So where we generated this into a feature line, we also established a feature line here. For this example, we go about how to close that feature line at various critical elevations to create the perimeter for the pond using the traditional Civil 3D grading methods. So let's go over to pond B, D, where that feature line has been established. And let's get into the nitty-gritty of how to use the Civil 3D grading for this particular pond design. So I go to my grading creation tools. I want to create a new grading group, and I'll call it pond. And this is straight out of the book. And I will not check automatic surface creation. And again, we explain that in the book. For complicated grading objects, the resources required to automatically generate a surface could be excessive. So therefore, we're going to be doing the grading, and after the grading is satisfactory, then we can come back and create a surface from this particular grading group. So, and that being said, we don't have surface selected yet, but we're never going to be grading to a surface. If I needed to create a surface to grade to a surface, I can click here and select the surface that I want to grade to. But that's not required for the pond. So I want to, I need to find, make sure I get the values right here. Okay. So we want to grade to a specific elevation, and this is all described in the course as to why we pick this particular elevation. So I want to grade to an elevation. I'm going to create my grading and select the feature line as my grading object. I do not want to weed the feature line through the grading. And it's asking me for the side of the grading. So I want to click inside for the pond, and I want to apply this to the entire length. And all these prompts are described in detail in the courses. So for the elevation, and that's what I needed to look up, it's 160.75. It's asking me for the slope to grade at. It's going to be a 3-to-1 slope, which is the default for both cut and fill. So now it graded that down, the feature line at a 3-to-1 slope till it reaches that particular elevation. Now I want to grade to a relative elevation. And for the feature, whenever Civil 3D finishes a particular grading, it ends with a feature line. So I select that feature line as the beginning of my new grading. It's no longer going to ask me for the side because it knows that on one side it's already graded. Therefore, it's going to be grading on the other side. And I want to apply it to the entire length. And the relative elevation is going to be minus 13. So we need to go 13 feet lower. We're going to grade at a slope at 2-to-1. It's not going to ask me the cut slope and the fill slope because it already knows that it's going to be minus 13. So it only has one direction to go. And now I hit enter because I'm done with the grading. Escape. So I did 2 features, and you see that every grading has a little diamond grip. And when I select that diamond grip, I can adjust the grading in my contextual ribbon up here. So recall I did a grading from the feature line down this one. I generate another grading, but I haven't yet filled in the pond. So therefore, I need to create an infill. Select the bottom of the pond, a diamond comes up, and it shows me that this is the bottom of the pond. So now that the grading is complete, I can select any of these diamonds. And in my contextual ribbon for the grading, I can go to my grading group properties, which is the pond. And it is at this point where I'm going to generate my surface. And the surface name will be pond. And this is my surface. So I click OK. It's not going to be a volume-based surface. If it were, I could select my surface that it should calculate the volumes from. And then I click OK. So now it generates my surface and my pond. And this is also written up in the book. Before I go to my object viewer, I want to save the drawing because sometimes the object viewer crashes Civil 3D. So I select the surface. I can look at it in my object viewer. Select what visual style I want and my predefined views. And this is the pond that we generated. Now we're going to go over to my grading optimization. And this is the newer way of grading. Completely different mindset. And Autodesk, we tend to say that the grading and optimization program is great to do your preliminary grading, but then it really needs to fine tune with the Civil 3D tools available. The way the grading optimization works is we assign a variety of, let me just escape out of this. I have a variety of grading objects predefined. They're accessible through tool palettes. So I have grading objects for building pads, ponds, curbs, etc. And when the grading objects are assigned to the drawing, they're available in my grading object browser. And any one of these have a variety of parameters. For example, for my pond properties, I have a berm and my specifics for the permanent pool. And I can predefine all these as I assign them to the variety of AutoCAD objects. I'm just going to close both my tool palettes and my object browser. And once they're defined, so I have my pond, my drainage line, my drain line properties, I can launch my optimization program. And all the features that I generated in my Civil 3D, my grading objects become available here. Just like my object browser in Civil 3D, I have my object browser in optimization program. What I can do is I can enable it or disable it, or I can toggle it off so it doesn't interfere visually. Variety of themes that I have here. For example, this is my elevation theme, and the gradation over here shows me the different elevations. I can turn it to a slope theme, and the gradation now shows me the variety of degrees of my slopes, or my aspect for my directions. And I have a little compass down here in terms of the colors for the different sides that it's pointing towards. And yeah, I can turn the visual, make it constant, or turn it to grayscale. Currently, I'm looking at my topology, which shows me the contours, but I can switch over to my triangulation to show the 10. I can reset any of these options that I'd set in Civil 3D. And I can also, during my optimization program, I can control with my options, I can tell it how many iterations to do, what my weighing options should be for my cut and fill, how much I should smooth my surface. And when that's all said and done, I can click Optimize, and it's going to go through its process. Oh, it's telling me that it has low confidence in the optimization to work. So I can stop and fix that. And it tells me that I have some slopes that are too steep to meet. I can dismiss them all because I know that they occur along the edge of the site, and I can re-optimize it. And now we see the optimization program working. And if I hover over any of these triangles, it can give me the statistics of this particular triangle. I have my convergence plot. I can maximize that. And typically what happens is once the convergence plot more or less levels off, even though I'm doing 10,000 iterations, if it's time constraints, I can more or less say, okay, it's really not going to go much further than this. So I can stop my optimization and send the results of this optimization back to my drawing. Now it's looking for how to create a new surface. We'll call it pond. Surface style if I want. What do I want to do with the feature lines that were generated? I can create new feature lines with a naming prefix of GO for grading and optimization 1. And I have one point that's being generated. So I can click finish. And here comes the surface that was generated. So these are some of the examples of how the course is laid out. We have a lot of theory, lecture material that we go through, and then we jump into the exercises. The exercises are progressive. It builds one onto the other to the other. And if you don't complete a particular exercise, or if you don't complete it successfully, you can always open up the next drawing and continue on with the exercises. Okay, let me jump back to, we did the courseware demonstration. We did the software demonstration. Okay, to recap, so the course deals primarily with grading and focusing mostly on grading for land developers. So it doesn't really include roadways at all. So we looked at the grading overview for land developers and the various styles that are required for the grading. The course looks at, introduces you to the grading optimization program. The course covers various methods of creating feature lines, and then the grading examples, such as building pad design, parking lot designs, pond designs, and parcel grading.